Hey guys, I just want to take a minute to recap last week's episode. A big thanks to everyone who commented on the review. I love hearing all of your guys' opinions. These reviews are very much influenced by first impressions, which, while not always accurate, are important, as a poor first impression can indicate issues in storytelling or other technical elements. That said, it's also easy to overlook a lot of details, and your comments got me thinking about some big points in last week's episode. So for your consideration, here's a quick revisit of the character of Seabreeze from It Ain't Easy Being Breezies. While it's not clear why the other Breezies weren't concerned about getting home, it does give more focus on Seabreeze's situation, which is important given his role in Fluttershy's revelation in this episode. However, Seabreeze never clearly communicated his reasons for wanting to go and instead just criticized and complained. While he does state danger is the reason he wants to get the group home, they were almost taken out by a leaf. If that didn't drive the point home to the group, what would? They reached the nectar and made it halfway back, so surely they're familiar with the danger of the trip by this point. Seabreeze's family, specifically his baby, make him much more likely to be an outlier in the group as far as concern goes. But this isn't established, which harms the lesson of his situation as we're still operating on a false impression of his character when his attitude changes. We don't have any insight into his character, so our instinct is to just assume that he's a jerk. The reunion of his family is both brief, establishing little emotion on the part of the characters, and at a time when the viewer is distracted by the reveal of the Breezy's world, reducing the likelihood the viewer will integrate the importance of his family rather than just a generic longing for home into Seabreeze's motivations earlier in the episode. This makes the attitude change less believable as Seabreeze's personality appears to do a complete 180 rather than a correction to its natural state. Understanding early in the episode, or revealing in his conversation with Fluttershy the influence of his concern for his family, could emphasize how he's not really a bad guy, but a small-scale Bizarro Nightmare Moon. While Nightmare Moon showed how negative emotions, specifically jealousy, could turn a good person bad, Seabreeze shows us how positive emotions, in this case concern for one's family, can cause a good person to act in a bad way. This parallels Fluttershy's situation wherein a positive trait, kindness, engenders negative behavior, strengthening these characters' connection in the episode and the significance of Seabreeze's gift. So while the elements of this character could have been better communicated, Seabreeze is surprisingly fleshed out with actions consistent for his character and situation, and adds significant value to this episode. While a lot of my concerns for the episode still stand, I wanted to add this section as a matter of giving credit where credit is due. Thank you. This week, we're looking at Season 4, Episode 17, Somepony to Watch Over Me. I'm Ramble, and joining me this week, I have Larscis.
Hi there, folks.
And DJ Midli.
How's it going, crew?
Thank you for joining us. It's been a while since we've had a CMC episode in Season 4, and this is actually by a new writer to the series, Scott Sonneborn. What were your guys' initial thoughts on this episode? Midli?
So it was a CMC episode with Applejack, who's not normally one of my favorite characters. Even in the beginning bits of the episode with Applejack running back to the farm and fawning all over Applebloom, I was sitting there going, this is just, I'm not enjoying this at all. This is not a good episode. I really was not enjoying the episode at all. It was just like, I don't think this is gonna go anywhere good. It was at the point that Applebloom was in the forest with that snake, llama, and whatever else, snake, llama, and lion type creature.
Yeah, chimera.
So the chimera. It was when Apple was in the forest with that chimera that things took a turn for the better, and from there on, I enjoyed the episode. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite episodes, but I wouldn't say I dislike the episode.
Larscis?
It's definitely not my favorite episode of the season. I didn't think it was all that weak of an episode, personally. Just because the characterization was there and the voice acting was there, but the story, there were issues with, as Midli said, the part where Applejack went back and started fawning over Applebloom didn't feel right to me. It felt like all of that character development that she had done over the past 3 seasons before this one was gone, and all of a sudden she was behaving as though she didn't know what was going on. This is her sister, a pony that she's been with a lot.
Well, we'll get into some of the characterization in just a bit. For me, I think that a lot of this comes down to it's an Apple Family episode. It's going to focus around family themes. That's something that people had in the past. I've heard people say Applejack's played out. All she really has is that family aspect, and that's said and done. Earlier in season 4, Pinky Apple Pie showed us that that isn't true, that there's a lot of very funny and very thought-provoking episodes that you can still do with the family themes and with primarily Applejack and her family. And I think a lot of the concerns on the family theme being played out discounted Apple Bloom's growth and development and the roles she can play in that regard. The cold open was really great. If you didn't know what to expect coming into this episode, it sort of pumped things up in terms of the importance of it. And it turns out that, she's just staying home alone. And I think that that goes down to the CMC episodes really being from the CMC's point of view and them kind of embellishing things in their heads a little larger than life. So that's a nice touch. The fight for me actually was a bit of the weaker side of the episode.
The fight scene itself wasn't strong. It wasn't a part that I really liked. It was just the point at the episode where everything turned to better. So the fight scene wasn't my most favorite part of the episode. It was just the part of the episode where I can pointedly say, at that marker, the episode got better.
The fight itself isn't what actually made me like that scene. It was the resolution to it to show that Applejack had all of this experience and knew how to handle the situation.
I did like the creature, though, and I did like how Applejack finished off the ram part of that and just threw ricotta cheese at the ram, and the ram was like, oh, nom, nom, ricotta cheese, yum. That was hilarious.
Well, this being a writer's first episode, and definitely some concerns about Applejack's characterization, do you think that Applejack really fit the role of a helicopter parent? Larscis, you were saying that felt more like a previous season 1 or season 2 Applejack. For Applejack, she's not just Apple Bloom's sister, but she's also, in a way, almost a surrogate parent for Apple Bloom. So I think that in that respect, maybe she is going to err a little more on the side of being protective. And not only that, but she is really the youngest, aside from Apple Bloom. When you have the rest of the Apple family are heading off, Granny Smith doesn't have any problems. Big Macintosh doesn't have any problems. The only one that's really reserved with the decision when it actually comes time is Applejack, but she's never been through that. While she's been in Apple Bloom's situation, she's never seen a sibling or, a child or grandchild go through that and have to put your trust in someone. So I think from that angle, it fits with her being flawed in that regard.
To what Larscis said about the helicopter parent feeling like it was 2 season 1, I agree with that point, and the reason I agree with that point is because the entire helicopter parent thing was done way over the top.
Padded rakes, double helmets.
Yeah, and it just wasn't that. It was the way Applejack was speaking, the way Applejack was fawning over her, the lines that she was dropping out. They were just too over the top, and as Larscis said, way too season 1 feeling. That entire segment was what almost killed the episode for me.
So from the humor aspect, you guys didn't, because there's a lot of good little gags, I guess. If you can get by, that's how the characters are acting. What they're doing is just completely ridiculous.
Yeah, like the multiple helmets and baby-proofing absolutely everything.
Well, it has a nice progression to it. At first, she's just back. She's going to help Apple Bloom. And then it goes on that slope of, well, the rake is padded and helmets and then double helmets.
And she put training wheels on the wheelbarrow.
It gets more and more ridiculous. And then eventually, yeah, she just gives up and puts Apple Bloom in a crib, right? That's about as far as you can get as far as babying someone, is to literally put them in a crib.
It went even further than that, though, because if you noticed, when Apple Bloom went out the window, the entire barn house was covered with bales of hay. She had built Apple Bloom a fortress around there to keep her safe from everything. And that's what I mean by it was just way too over the top.
I can see that. I think that it is intentionally ridiculous. You have to give the writer that. It's completely intentional. It's not like they didn't get, in a way, Applejack's character, and that's why she's doing these things. It's intentionally over the top and ridiculous. If you don't like that take on the character, it's really going to hurt, and I can see you not liking the episode for that, but on the other hand, it is. It's supposed to be funny.
Don't get me wrong, I didn't like the episode for that. As I said, I liked the episode. It's just that segment I really didn't like, and it felt like a pun that went to a groan-worthy pun that just kept going from the groan-worthy pun to the point where you're sitting there going, dude, stop. Just stop.
It went too far, basically, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Too far or too long?
That's actually a good question, because I don't know if it's too far or too long. I can definitely tell you that segment felt too long and it dragged out, but as for too far, I can't tell you if it went too far or not, so I think I'm going to have to go with just too long.
In a way, having the progression and having it build up like that needs to be there to be that catalyst to get Apple Bloom to do what she does. But in terms of Apple Bloom's motivation, maybe we should go on to characterization in this episode of Apple Bloom and the CMC. Do you guys have any remarks in that regard?
I definitely like how the CMC are acting more as a unit in this episode. I got a feeling in this episode that the CMC, you can tell their friendships deepening, and I really like that, to the point where they're willing to do ridiculous and more ridiculous things for each other. In terms of individual CMC, I don't think there was too much characterization for either of those two, other than we still see Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo, the mother figure or the parental figure to them is clearly still Rarity. And I really would like to see at some point, see who Scootaloo's real parental figure is. Not in the sense of Rainbow Dash as a parental figure, but in terms of just general, who's Scootaloo's parents?
Yeah, that is a question that's been around since season 1. Speaking of which, you said that it felt too season 1 to me. I just wanted to point out that season 1 is actually my favorite season, but the point I was getting to with this feeling too much like a season 1 episode was that it made certain elements of the characters feel completely undeveloped despite all the growth they've had.
It's interesting that you bring that point up, considering when I was watching it with my girlfriend, her and I had the exact same thought, which was we both thought Apple Bloom was going to get her cutie mark in this episode.
I definitely think these episodes are required to get to the point where it's believable to give the CMC their cutie marks. I don't think that it's quite there yet. The old method that they had for getting their cutie marks was impulsive. It never would have worked because it didn't have any care or insight or depth into their efforts. And while you could say, well, the other kids in their class have their cutie marks, why do the CMC have to go to all these great lengths? But that's the difference. The cutie mark crusaders are trying to find their special talent. You can stumble across it and know just right then and there, yes, that's what I want to do. But if it's more of that journey, if it's more of that discovery aspect than just stumbling upon it, you really have to take a more thoughtful approach, I think, before something really clicks.
And that is exactly what we thought, because Apple Bloom was going to be alone on the farm, doing the chores. She wasn't attempting to get her cutie mark. She was just working on the farm, and bam, she was going to get her cutie mark at the end of the day. As the episode progressed, we shifted away and we're like, okay, no, she's not going to get the cutie mark. This episode is not going to be focusing around her chores at the farm. It's going to be focusing around Applejack, so our thoughts changed.
So Applejack cost Apple Bloom her cutie mark by returning. I can definitely see that. Everyone else is gone. It really is Apple Bloom's farm. So that could definitely be the kind of situation that she needed to really discover something about herself. I definitely agree that I don't think there's a lot of characterization for either Scootaloo or Sweetie Belle, and that's just the nature of the episode. It really is focusing on Apple Bloom and Applejack, which gives less time for the rest of the CMC. But the CMC are needed to give Apple Bloom that head start, especially because Applejack is hovering over her, right? She couldn't escape in a believable manner with Applejack so over her shoulder. But I think that overall, a lot of the group dynamic that they have comes through, because you have Scootaloo saying they can swap out when they're pretending to be Apple Bloom sleeping, but they're lying in bed. How do you get tired of lying in bed? It's just kind of that not quite complete logic that the CMC sometimes have.
Yeah. Also, I like the little details that actually occurred in this episode. For example, it's been in fanfics since season 1 that Apple Bloom's bow is supposed to have some quality to it, and yet we see a closet full of hats and bows and a pile of bows in her armoire.
Well, there's a lot of those almost meta jokes in this episode, right? The hat and bow closet, like with The Simpsons, how Lisa comments, I feel like I've been wearing this same red dress forever.
Larscis, I'm terribly sorry to say this, but with your enunciation of Bose, I keep thinking you said Apple Bloom has a closet full of Bose beer. It's a beer we've got up in Canada, and I was picturing her having a closet full of beer. Whoops.
Another little detail I liked was when Apple Bloom was coming out of the fog, or I guess it would be smoke since it's a fire marsh, with her cart with the little pile on the spring. It reminded me of the introduction of Dr. King Schultz in Django Unchained.
Ooh.
Oh, I have not seen that movie, unfortunately.
Nor have I. In terms of references, as you brought up Django Unchained, I could have sworn that the Cajun ponies were meant to be Gravity Falls ponies.
You know, I could totally see that.
You know, I didn't pay too much attention to them, unfortunately. I don't think I could place them. Do you have any specific pairings you think are there?
In terms of specific character, I'm pretty sure I saw the old grandfather type figure that normally wears a fez in Gravity Falls. I don't actually watch the show, so I'm not entirely sure. But there was something about those Cajun ponies that made me go, I've seen those characters on Tumblr before, only not ponified, obviously.
And also I've noticed that it's been mentioned a lot that the animation quality is really exceeding the previous seasons this one. And I think some examples of that actually really come to light in the fight scene.
Yes.
There's a slight filter on the corners there. There's a lot of J.J. Abrams style lens flare almost. And then there's the scene where Apple Bloom runs around the chimera and tangles the snake in its own legs there, where it has that really good 3D effect. There's also a scene where she's running away from the cart and the camera's bouncing like it would be in an action movie.
Speaking about Apple Bloom going around the chimera and speaking about references, Star Wars anyone taking down an AT-AT?
Yes.
With the way the camera was panning around as Apple Bloom went around the chimera, I definitely think that was a reference to a snowspeeder taking down the AT-AT in Star Wars.
I could see that. Well, the technical aspects, the visuals, that was something that really got brought up early in Season 4, but it almost feels like we got used to it. And definitely across the board, whether it's Sweet Apple Acres, Ponyville, wherever, the quality of animation has improved in Season 4, but I think that it's the contrast between the farm and the fire marsh that really drives home just some of the excellent animation there, including like the smoke, the fire effects, and just the camera work in general while the fight scene's going on.
It's not just the camera work that's really indicative of the animation quality, it's also the way they're taking into account muscle movement. I noticed it in Season 4 at the beginning, their mouth muscles, you're seeing them a lot more, you're seeing their lips move a lot more, and in the fight scene when the snake was being pulled, I noticed the muscle really paying close attention to how those muscles are being pulled and bunched up at the end of the tree.
Speaking of the fight scene, the Chimera, most ironic villain ever? Because you have the goat that says, do you know what it's like having your sister constantly looking over your shoulder?
Yeah. The only thing with the Chimera character that felt weird to me was the snake. I felt they could have put another thing on the creature other than a snake. The snake really felt out of place. I still love that character, don't get me wrong, but the snake, I felt it could have been something different.
Well, in ancient Greek mythology, it was actually a lion, a snake, and a goat, usually depicted as a lion with the head of a goat arising from its back and a tail that ended in a snake's head.
Well, and this isn't the first time we've really seen something straight out of Greek mythology. In It's About Time, you have Cerberus.
Yeah.
It also makes you wonder about the geographical location of Ponyville, considering it's not far from Tartarus, it has a flame marsh, and it has hydras living nearby.
And also not just hydras, and because I keep apparently bringing up Star Wars references, we saw a creature very similar to the sandworm type creature 2 episodes back, so maybe there's a little Star Wars-like going on.
Okay, the Tasselworm. I've heard already that people are saying this is a terrible fight and it was the worst villain ever. I think that the Tasselworm is the worst because it literally comes out of nowhere and gets resolved almost immediately.
As you bring up a fair point with the Tasselworm fight, because in comparison with the Tasselworm fight, the Chimera fight is a lot better. I felt the only reason they had the Tasselworm fight in is so they could have some beautiful pew-pew with Twilight's horn shooting lasers. It was almost like episodes of Star Trek where they just have an excuse to shoot off phasers because yay, special effects.
Well, looking to the lesson of this episode, do you think that the fight, the villain, this whole journey of Apple Bloom's effectively added to that?
Oh, most definitely. It added two things to the episode. One, it taught Apple Bloom that yes, she can most definitely do it. And two, it also helped teach Applejack that yes, Apple Bloom can also do it. So the fight was a teaching mechanism both for Apple Bloom and Applejack in that it taught Apple Bloom internally she can do it, and it taught Applejack externally, yes, my little sister can fend for herself and she is grown up.
I want to add to that and say that it also displayed that, as capable as one may be, having some level of experience also makes you more capable in the end.
Bingo. I think that this scene was fantastic in that it really tied in a lot of different elements that fit in with the lesson together in one scene. As soon as Applejack hears that Apple Bloom went off to deliver the pies, she gets that look on her face. There's that realization of what Apple Bloom is getting herself into. It's the real danger versus the imagined danger, which is why she had to baby-proof the corners of the doors and everything else like that. It comes down to a numbers game where you can be afraid of everything, but there are actual dangers in the world, and I think that you need to focus more on those than every little thing that could happen. And not only that, but for kids, especially, if kids are trying to prove that they're mature, that they're capable, as you kind of see in the cold opening, where Apple Bloom kind of shushes the CMC and is like, I accept your decision. And then they walk behind the corner and just explode with excitement. That she's trying to prove herself capable, and if you don't give kids a safe opportunity to do that, they may try to create their own opportunity, which is something that is too much for them, is something they're not capable. So by denying them the ability to prove themselves in a safe environment, you're almost forcing them into what could be a more dangerous environment.
I think another part that goes back to what I was coming on with experience was this was a scene a lot like the one where Pinkie Pie was trying to round up musical instruments to deal with the Parasprites, where Applejack specifically mentioned she didn't take a fireproof boots or a snake charming flute or a hunk of cheese.
Lion Tamer's chair, yeah.
I love the fact that it's a folding Lion Tamer's chair.
That's pretty awesome. Although it's I guess effective for storage. And it was not just cheese, it was ricotta, thank you very much.
Yeah, I know. Gotta remember that it was ricotta cheese, which is important because ricotta cheese is mostly made from goat's milk.
Oh, hey, there we go. I didn't know that.
Yeah, ricotta cheese is a especially creamy, chunky cheese.
It's like the strangest combination of feta, Greek yogurt, and cottage cheese all in one.
To me, the ricotta seemed a bit of a curveball just because I'm not up on my cheeses. But the rest of the items, I agree, felt like that Paris Sprite episode in just the ridiculousness. And while it fit in Applejack being kind of foolish this episode, contrasting to the CMC's naivety, I think that it goes to show the street smarts. And to Applejack, all of that made sense. It didn't make sense to the CMC at all, but it made perfect sense to Applejack because she knows through experience and having confronted these things, whereas the CMC have been, in some cases, denied those opportunities. So again, it goes back to if you don't let people learn, they won't know, and they may not know something important like bring fireproof boots. Well, going back to the cold opening and tying the cutie marks into this, one reason I didn't expect Apple Bloom to get her cutie mark here is because the feigned maturity, what they have, right? They're acting mature because they think that makes them mature. The fact that they go around the corner and they're like, oh my god, you guys, this is going to be incredible, shows that they're not really approaching this in a mature manner. It's just that if Apple Bloom projects an air of maturity to her family, that is somehow progress, when in reality, it's not. Which is evident from the fact that while she's mature enough to stay home alone, which isn't that much of an accomplishment, there is plenty in the world that she's unprepared to face.
Especially the point you brought up about it's a faked maturity because, as you said, they go around the corner and then they go all, yay, ha, ha, ha. But they try and put on this false front. Now, even that false front could be seen as a good thing, though, because it means they've got an understanding of maturity, even if they don't necessarily follow it themselves because they haven't internalized it yet.
I think it's not an understanding, it's a misunderstanding, because they're seeing the outcome of people being mature, but like you said, they haven't internalized it. So while they may pretend that they're mature, it's like having a tea party, right? They haven't matured beyond, I guess, the recognition of what they need to do, but just like they haven't gotten their cutie marks, they haven't really honed in on what actually makes someone mature.
The point you made up about they're seeing what others are doing and they're trying to emulate that. They don't understand the progression from point A to point B. They just understand where you're at point A and where you're at point B, so it's a false emulation.
Yeah.
For me, there was one thing about that episode that I really felt was lacking, and I really would have loved if there was a few more minutes.
A song?
No, it wasn't a song. I know everyone knows I'm a DJ, so they're going to assume I'm thinking about the song. It's not that. I wish there was more of a scene with the Cajun ponies. Literally, like a minute longer with the Cajun ponies, and I would have loved it. The song, whatever. We've got a lot of songs this. But the Cajun ponies, oh god. Give me some characterization on those Cajun ponies, and I would have loved that episode.
Well, that's a great little bit of world building, and even that scene, while it wasn't the action-packed fight scene, it was still really well put together. It wasn't just tacked on at the end. The ambient sound during that scene just jumped out, and we've had that at Sweet Apple Acres, and we've had that at other locations as well, but for whatever reason, it just really jumped out at me there. It really felt like they were trying to flesh out the location.
It really felt like you were down home in Louisiana.
You know, my favorite part about them, I actually have it on my other monitor here looking at it now. One of the things I like is that it's obviously that Cajun Creole style, and yet they somehow made it more pony by adding little details like the different colored Christmas lights and the little colored banners that you normally wouldn't see if you were to actually go to the South.
Oh yeah. Huh. Maybe Cheese Sandwich had been through there.
Wow. I wouldn't have even known that, being up north.
When you think Louisiana, the last thing you think is streamers.
This is true. You think of firefly lights and them using swamp stuff to decorate. Or those really tacky RV lights.
Oh god.
Well, it's about time, again, for final thoughts. So, Midli, do you want to just give us your overall impression of this episode?
The episode had a weak start. Somewhere in the middle, got better, and then right near the end is what really made me enjoy the episode, specifically because of those Cajun Creole ponies, and had they given one more minute of those Cajun Creole ponies, I would have loved the episode just for that alone.
For me, the episode had a pretty promising start, and then it sort of fell off about the middle. Then towards the end, last quarter or so, it really had a nice upshoot, and then it had a really good ending. I felt that it characterized them both well and showed off that they'd learned their lessons.
Well, I can definitely see the pacing being a concern for a lot of people depending on what they were expecting from this episode. I think one of the big things this has going for it is that there was no real Deus Ex Machina moments. Nothing just happened by coincidence other than Applejack arriving just in the nick of time. The fact that Apple Bloom takes the pies and goes off to deliver them, that was set up by the fact that, Big Mac and Applejack have to go and deliver these to two different locations. It caused them to have to split up, but also have the pie cart returned, so there's this journey for Apple Bloom already set up. And while you could say, well, yeah, but they didn't need to have Applejack go off, she could have been helping Big Mac or something like that. It comes back to everything is believable in the context in which it's presented. You don't go and say, there have Applejack go off to deliver the pie so that Apple Bloom can go and deliver them through a dangerous swamp and then Applejack has to go and save her. That doesn't get telegraphed, right? So everything just flows really well. The fact that Apple Bloom escapes to do that is set up by the overbearingness, over-the-top overbearingness that Applejack has. And, we discussed earlier, can be construed as being in character for her. I think that that's a big plus for this episode, is that it's not just making things up on the fly. Even the fact that Apple Bloom loses the cart and has to go back. You could argue, why does she go back for that? Maybe she feels responsible for it, but it comes down to, at the end, Applejack sees it, and she knows that, wow, Apple Bloom actually managed to not lose the cart, not lose track of it, and it shows that Apple Bloom is capable. So, little decisions, big decisions, everything in the episode really flows together and connects well. And I think that from a storytelling point of view, even if it's not your cup of tea, you have to acknowledge that the elements of a good story were there. So that's my take overall on it. Well, that's about all the time we have for this week. Once again, my guests were DJ Midli.
I'm DJ Midli. I spin on mixology every Saturday night on Everfree Network from 7 p.m. until 9 p.m. Sometimes I go longer. I'm known as the master of marathon sets. About 2 weeks ago, just came off a massive 18-hour DJ set, straight through for 18 hours. Also on that show is the venerable DJ One Trick. So be sure to catch us every Saturday night from 7 p.m. EST until 9 p.m. EST.
And Larscis.
And I'm Larscis. I'm none of those things. I'm the audio editor for Elements of Harmony on Tuesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard.
And if you haven't yet, go and check their shows out on Everfree Network. Tune in next week for a review of Season 4, Episode 18, Mod Pie. This has been EFN Presents. Thanks for watching.